Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today's TIA webinar, TIA Government Affairs Update, Advocacy, Policy, and What's Ahead in 2026. My name is Anthony, the Senior Education Manager here at TIA, as well as the host for today's show. I'm joined by my colleagues Daniel Hoff and Brian Davis, who will introduce themselves further shortly. I just have a few housekeeping items to get through first. First up, with the antitrust statement, discussion, comments, and presentations during TIA functions must not refer to any past, present, or future rates, prices, or anything related thereto, include any reference to marketing strategies, include any discussion of boycotts of any person, product, or firm, or inhibit any members, employees from discussing employment with other member companies. Additionally, things you hear during the meeting that are confidential and private to TIA should not be shared publicly without its prior consent or used against or in competition with TIA. Next up for questions during the event today, we would love all of the questions and feedback and interaction from the audience. We appreciate anything you might have to say, whether it's a question or asking about a resource, anything like that. Feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A, and we will aim to get to your question later at the end of the presentation. But that said, if we have to do any more research or find a resource and get back to you via email, we will aim to do that as soon as possible. So as you think of your questions during the event today, please feel free to put them in that chat. Whether it's feedback, comments, questions, we would love to hear from you. Additionally, we will be touching on some TIA resources today, so be sure to take any notes, and just please note this is for TIA members only. And if you have any questions about what your membership offers, please feel free to email membership@tianet.org. And if you have any questions about something specific related to this event today, you can also email education@tianet.org. And we will put you in the right direction. With that, Daniel and Brian, I will turn it over to you all.
Hey, thanks so much, Anthony. And I also just want to reiterate Anthony's comments. Please feel free to use the chat, ask questions. If we had the ability to open up everybody's mic on this particular Zoom, we would. I really do want the engagement. I would like questions, and we will try and keep a close eye on them as possible. My name is Daniel Hoff. I'm the VP of Government Affairs here at TIA. I've been working in transportation policy and lobbying for about 20 years now. Spent time working on surface transportation. I've spent time in aviation. But this is kind of a coming home for me. I worked in a trade association for 10 years, went out into the corporate world for a little while, and now coming back to a trade association. I've been with TIA for about 2 years. It's been an amazing experience. I have to say, working with our members on a day-to-day basis, going up to Capitol Hill and representing our interests there, has been an extraordinarily rewarding experience. I just, again, I can't say enough how nice it's been just working with everybody here at TIA at the staff level, and then just our membership again. I know we've got a couple people on today, 11 or 12 people. I really appreciate the fact that you're TIA members. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, and thank you for your membership. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Brian Davis. I'm one of TIA's government affairs managers. I've been in advocacy education for over 10 years now. Been with the TIA for just over 2 months now, so I'm still fresh on the scene when it comes to our members. And really, it's my role to help provide the resources and education necessary to help you all make advocacy as easy and as engaging as possible. So I've really enjoyed getting up to speed on our issues and starting to connect with a lot of the members, and really looking forward to seeing more of our members in the days and weeks ahead, and looking forward to our conversation today.
So I'm going to start off just kind of with some basics, the 119th Congress, because I think a lot of the things that we talk about in terms of what we're doing on Capitol Hill is the art of the possible. And why that's so important to understand is simply because the margins in Congress right now are very tight. There's just a handful of Republican in the majority, 217 to 214. There's one independent that's caucusing with the Republicans. And so it's a very, very kind of tight chamber. If you recall from your civics classes, the House is a majority rule. So the majority kind of carries all the weight. They set the agenda. If they can get to the majority vote, they're able to pass just about anything they want. It's a 218 votes for the majority. So if they get to that magic number, then they are good to go. And so when you have margins this thin, neither the Republican Party or the Democratic Party is kind of a monolithic structure, meaning there are lots of different factions within both parties that have different kind of views, different goals for legislating, and different ways of engaging. So keeping that majority together when you have such a thin margin is very challenging. And so it's just an interesting kind of dynamic. And so it makes legislating more challenging. And so that's why we talk a little bit about the art of the possible. In the United States Senate, we've got 53 Republicans, 45 Democrats. There are two independents that caucus with the Democrats. And then again, it is a majority rules chamber, and that 51 votes could theoretically move legislation forward. But in the United States Senate, you need 60 votes. It essentially requires the supermajority to begin the process of debating legislation, to move to the point where you can cloture and begin voting. So the United States Senate is very much for, I would say, 99% of legislation. It is a process of bipartisan consensus in a lot of ways. That doesn't mean that the Democrats are going to get what they want or the Republicans are going to get what they want all of the time. It means that there's going to have to be some maneuvering and conversation between the two parties to move something forward. And that also creates challenges. Again, you have both parties. They are not monolithic instruments in the United States Senate. You have factions in the Republican majority and factions in the Democratic minority. And so while the Republicans certainly get to set the agenda in the chamber, it is not simply a my way or the highway in the Senate or in the House. So that covers about 99% of the legislation, and certainly legislation that we'll be talking about today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what TIA is working on. You'll hear some terms and some legislative language, and certainly some bill titles here. This is not all that we're working on, but I would say this at a high level is what we're moving through on a regular basis, kind of in the last few months. What we're really working towards is something called surface transportation reauthorization. This is a piece of legislation that comes up every few years, sometimes 4 years, sometimes 6 years, depends on how long the period of authorization is. But what it does is it sets policy and spending for surface transportation, so roads, bridges. It also sets the policy in terms of what are the safety regulations that FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, all of those things. What are the structures that these organizations or these agencies are going to put in place that govern operations for trucking companies, for businesses and logistics, for all of the things that we kind of work through on a day-to-day basis. So this legislation is extraordinarily important. It tends to be bipartisan. It tends to bring together the parties. That's one of the great things about transportation is that the leadership for both the majority and the minority on the House Transportation and Infrastructure side, it's Sam Graves, and Mr. Larson is in the minority. He's the ranking member. They work together very closely. On the Senate side, it's Senator Cruz and Senator Cantwell. They work together very closely on transportation issues. So this is one of the few places where, yes, you might read in the news kind of all of the partisan rancor that happens in Capitol Hill and happens across the spectrum. In transportation, it's kind of one of the seas of calm that thanks to the leadership of both parties, we're able to have a lot of bipartisan agreement on what moves forward. And so we focus heavily on a surface transportation bill when it's up. And this year, the surface transportation reauthorization is due September 30th. So that's when the current authorizing bill expires, and the new one would have to be put in place, or an extension would have to be passed. So it's just kind of going in order of what we've worked on most recently, Delilah's Law. This was a piece of legislation that came up in the State of the Union. The president mentioned it. Several senators and several members of the House moved to introduce versions of this legislation. The House Transportation and Infrastructure introduced a version of this. It limits non-domiciled CDLs. It requires a 1 year period for confirmation of immigration status and English language proficiency for CDL holders. And for brokerages, the most important kind of component is that it bans foreign dispatch services in most cases. I think this is an issue that's come up in the industry for years in terms of foreign dispatch services kind of coming into this country, representing themselves as carriers or brokers and trying to move freight and really operating outside of the regulatory framework in the United States. In some cases, dispatch services, the foreign dispatch services, are actually the tip of the spear for organized criminal elements that help kind of move cargo theft in this country, and that's also a component of it that we're concerned with. So this legislation came out of the T&I committee. The committee marked it up. They debated it. They moved it forward. We'll have to see what happens with it in the next steps. It could move to the House floor to be voted on, or it could be modified and rolled into surface transportation reauthorization. We'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks, next few months. The other piece of legislation that we're working on is Securing American Freight Enforcement and Reliability in Transport Act, or the SAFER Act. This was introduced in the Senate by Senator Young. This focuses primarily on cargo theft. It combats illegal foreign dispatch services as well. It approaches the problem in a different way. It looks more towards registration of dispatch services, defining them, and then making sure that they come into regulatory compliance. Also something that we support, but it's just good to note that both the House and the Senate are trying to deal with this issue of foreign dispatch services. We'll have to see how it plays out as surface transportation reauthorization comes together, but we obviously support both the House and the Senate in trying to deal with this problem. It establishes a cargo advisory committee that includes brokers. That's really important because this committee will be advising the Secretary of Transportation, perhaps the Department of Justice as well, Secretary of Commerce, and so having brokers on that committee to advise these key policymakers is really important. It requires coordination between the Department of Justice and the Department of Transportation and other agencies in regards to a coordinated plan to fight cargo theft. This is, again, one of our key issues, making sure that the federal government is paying attention to this, putting resources behind it, engaging in practices that mitigate the risk of cargo theft, but also begin to prosecute it for the organized crime that it is. This isn't one load being stolen in Philadelphia or one load being stolen in Pittsburgh or one load being stolen in Los Angeles or Dallas. This is about organized criminal elements creating a multi-state national cargo theft rings, and that's being organized by generally Eastern European organized crime syndicate. So we really focus on that component as well, making sure that DOT, DOJ, DHS, and others are coordinating their activities so that investigations and prosecutions are done in a manner that treats it as that organized crime problem. Registration reform so that we're trying to keep the bad actors from getting into the system, and then driver training registry integrity, essentially making sure that if you are getting a CDL, that you're doing the training that you're supposed to be doing as part of the regulation, you're doing it at a reputable facility that is actually requiring you as the CDL holder to go through the process of appropriate training. Combating Organized Retail Crime Act. This passed out of the House Judiciary Committee. This particular piece of legislation is important. It requires the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and others to create a coordinated task force, similar to what Senator Young's bill does. It also creates a data center in which the federal government will begin collecting data on cargo theft, and then allocating resources and evolving investigative practices around that data that they've collected. And then it also creates stiffer penalties for cargo theft. So rather than it being treated as a one-off crime, again, it's treated more as an organized crime problem. We're also supporting HR 880, 337, the Household Goods Consumer Protection Act. This does three basic things. We're cautiously optimistic that it'll be incorporated in surface transportation reauthorization. It reauthorizes civil penalties for FMCSA. Essentially, if FMCSA sees somebody doing something that's criminal or has provided fraudulent information to the register their company or themselves, the FMCSA can now say, okay, we're going to impose a civil penalty of up to $10,000 per instance. It requires enforcement of the principal place of business, meaning that either whether you're a brokerage or a carrier, you won't be able to just have a PO box or a FedEx box as your principal place of business. You actually have to have a place where somebody can go and inspect equipment, inspect records, make sure that you're actually in regulatory compliance. And then it requires the FMCSA to start looking at commonalities in registration. So if you're registering repeatedly as a using similar cell phone numbers, using similar names and others aspects of registration requirements, and you're a known fraudulent actor, or you start seeing patterns in registration that indicate fraudulent activity, FMCSA will begin to flag those and investigate them appropriately. The Broker Modernization Act. This is something that TIA has been pushing. Again, the crux of it was faced on combating illegal foreign dispatch services. We also want to finalize broker qualification standards that were implemented as law back in 2012. The FMCSA started that process but never finished it. So we want to see those qualification standards fully implemented. That'll increase safety in the industry. It'll also enable kind of a solid standard for new entrants, that they have to understand their both regulatory requirements and their fiduciary responsibility. And then also, we want to deal with rate intrusion, or what some have called broker transparency. We think that's really important to kind of combat against. This is a 1980 regulation that essentially allows third-party carriers to review contracts that brokers and shippers enter into. It violates confidentiality. It exposes trade secrets. It exposes margins of brokers. It exposes data in terms of costs for shippers. It would essentially flatten the market, push smaller brokerages out of business. It would push smaller carriers out of business. And we want to start moving away from that type of regulation that's clearly a vestigial regulation from 1980. The Motor Carrier Safety Selection Standard Act. This would create a basic carrier selection standard for brokers that'll likely be reintroduced sometime in 2026. I'm guessing in the summer of 26 of this year, so that we look at how the interactions are for carrier selection between brokers and carriers takes place, and what the kind of safety and cargo theft analysis needs to be. Before we move on to kind of administration outreach, what TIA is doing to talk with the administration, I just wanted to kind of put into context what the current kind of cabinet looks like and who we're talking to. So a lot of the times that when I talk with people, they say, "Oh, well, you're probably just talking with organizations or people in the government that deal with transportation." So the U.S. Department of Transportation, maybe Homeland Security. In this type of administration and the way this administration is developing policy, we really want to talk with a very broad range of actors within the administration and agencies within the administration. So we're talking to the Domestic Policy Council, we're talking to the Department of State, we're talking to Homeland Security, we're talking to Labor, we're talking to the Treasury, we're talking to deputy chiefs of staff, we're talking to the Office of Management and Budget. And I just say this, and I just have this here so that there's a better understanding within our membership more broadly, that we're not just talking to one agency or one component of the government. We're really trying to engage with as much of the government as possible so that they understand what brokerages do, how important we are to the industry, how important we are to the movement of goods, and ultimately that if we take on added burdens, either through costs of regulation or through liability or through any of the components that we talk about kind of in the modern businesses sense, those costs ultimately impact consumers. Those costs ultimately challenge our small businesses. And so we have to make sure that they understand that from both a macro and kind of tactical standpoint as well. So it's broad engagement. And that leads me to if you're coming to Capital Ideas, which is happening next week, the Deputy Administrator Jesse Ellison from FMCSA is going to address the audience there. I would encourage everybody to attend the show. If you are attending the show, I would really encourage you to come listen to the Deputy Administrator talk. He'll be talking about FMCSA's regulatory priorities for the industry. He'll be talking through a whole slew of things that they're working on, engagement with the industry. I'm sure he'll touch on foreign dispatch services and other components. I also think there'll be time to meet him one-on-one and personally. So if you are attending the show, I really do encourage you to attend this session. He's really great. He's been extraordinarily open. The entire administration has. FMCSA, led by Administrator Bars, has had a very high level of engagement with TIA. We've met with him, collectively probably a dozen times. It's just a very good relationship, and I hope everybody will be able to attend this session. So I just wanted to talk a little bit of how we engage with the administration. So we really look at it kind of three meeting types. We look at it as an education meeting. This might take place with, career staff or people that are part of the policy development team, but not necessarily the principal or the one that holds a portfolio. We might then move into policy meetings, and these are really about talking to people who hold the issue portfolio, who really make decisions on policy from a staff level. And then they report directly into, I would say, the principal or cabinet level, senior level official. And then finally, we look at TIA leadership or member meetings. We try and make sure that our members get engaged with members of the administration directly so that the principals, so people at the cabinet level, senior policymakers, can really connect with our membership, connect with individual company owners, connect with individual workers, make sure that they understand that this isn't, TIA isn't representing something that's amorphic. We're representing people, we're representing jobs, we're representing businesses, we're representing the people that build the tax base across this country. And that ultimately, the only reason why the things that we use on an everyday basis get to where they need to get to is because of this industry. So we really try and make sure that our membership is able to connect with senior leaders in Washington, D.C. Our incoming chairman just met with a member of Congress, I think 2 weeks ago. And we continue to have those types of engagements on a regular basis. So we really look at it as an ongoing conversation with the administration, different meeting with the administration at different levels, and ensuring that that communication happens, again, not just one time or a few times, but over the long term, over the 4 to 8 years of an administration. I'll stop here and I'll let Brian kind of go in through how you can advocate, how you can add your voice to what we're doing on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I mean, he really presented you with a lot of different information there, and he and the rest of our team here in DC do a phenomenal job. But it's really important for you all to understand that lawmakers, and whether that's Congress or in the administration, are much more willing to listen to you on these issues as opposed to us, because you are the constituents, you are the experts, and dealing with these issues day in and day out. And so it's critical that you're adding your voice to these issues that are important to your business, to your profession. And we try and make that process as easy as possible and hopefully as engaging as possible as well. So, one of the easiest ways to do that is by visiting the TIA Action Center, where, let's say you want to go ahead and message your member of Congress on one of the issues that Daniel mentioned, like Delilah's Law or Corca, but you don't really know how to do that. Well, if you visit the TIA Action Center, and I just dropped the link to that in the chat, it goes to a couple of different campaigns specific to those pieces of legislation where you can actually email a message to your member of Congress that you can either personalize, or we've already pre-written a message there as well. That all you have to do is put in your email, your address, and read the message or customize it, click send. The whole thing takes about 2 minutes, and then you will go ahead and be able to send that message directly to the person that represents you in Congress, and their office will follow up with you and hopefully start a conversation. And this kind of engagement is critically important on our issues because it allows them to hear from you. Like I said, you're the experts and they want your input. And the more messages that offices get, the more they understand that these issues are critically important to their constituents and will prioritize that. And they'll follow up with messages of their own and want to engage more. And uh, this helps to build the foundation and the education for these issues that are critically important. Another way in which the TIA can help uh, sort of that next level of advocacy is by helping you to build relationships with lawmakers. Some of you might already have established relationships and you're just not familiar as to how to leverage this. And we can help you sort of put those pieces together. We help to organize site visits to have members of Congress or your staff or their staff visit your business. If you want to show off and talk about the great work and some of the challenges that you're facing, we'll help to connect you and do all of the legwork that's involved with having that lawmaker visit your business and to develop that kind of relationship, whether that is, like I said, a site visit or maybe meeting with somebody in the district office or even attending a political fundraiser. We want you all to be a resource, and by extension, the TIA to be a resource when it comes to the issues that are critical to your business and to our profession at large. And so when these issues are being debated in committee or on the floor, um, lawmakers have an idea. I met with this TIA member a couple weeks ago. Let me go ahead and ping them and see how they feel on this issue. Or maybe because of the meeting, they have an understanding of where we stand on that issue. And so, developing those relationships and leveraging those kinds of relationships are essential when we're talking about trying to influence policy. Um, and so, a higher level of this is by attending our policy forum. I think the slides are getting messed up there, Daniel. I think, yeah, sorry about that. I think, yeah, there we go. Um, when we're talking about uh, advocacy at its highest level, we talked about messages and uh, leveraging relationships, but face-to-face advocacy is the most important, and being able to meet with your member of Congress in DC or their staff is always going to have a profound impact when it comes to that relationship building there. And so I do encourage folks that if they haven't attended policy forum it previously, be sure to be on the lookout when registration opens for policy forum in September. Because it is a fantastic event where TIA members from across the country join, participate in advocacy education and advocacy training, and then go up to Capitol Hill and meet with their members of Congress and be able to talk to them face to face about these issues that are critically important. Um, and that's just, the start of that relationship building that you can then, follow up with them after the fact, whether that is, some of those other methods of, hosting a site or attending a site visit or attending a fundraiser, that's sort of the jumping off point at policy forum. And it's just a great way for folks to get engaged and to see that face-to-face advocacy crystallize. And then sort of, another great way that I like to talk about for you to sort of amplify TIA's advocacy efforts is the TIA PAC, and that's our political action committee that really helps to amplify our advocacy efforts moving forward. And that really requires that commitment to each and every member of the TIA when possible. And Daniel, if you can go to the next slide, I'll sort of just spend a minute here, really talking about the PAC and our political action committee, which is a separate fund from your membership dues that really just allows the association to either educate or to help elect uh, candidates who might be in favor of some of our issues and really just help to amplify those efforts when it comes to our approach here in Capitol Hill. And really just a strong pack really just helps us to be strategic with our advocacy efforts. And so, last year we were able to raise $128,000 from just over 100 contributors, and we're just aiming to increase our goal for 2026 is to raise $175,000 from just over if we can get as many donors as possible. But a strong association with a strong and active PAC has a higher contribution rate. And so we're really just focused on building that education and talking about the great work that our PAC does and really helps us to provide a little bit more strength in our advocacy effort. And that really just involves that commitment from you all who are more engaged than others when it comes to helping to amplify our grassroots and our advocacy efforts. And Daniel mentioned that we have the deputy administrator attending Capital Ideas. We'll be at Capital Ideas as well. We have a booth. We're taking meetings. We're happy to educate folks on the work that our advocacy team and the PAC does. And so, we would, if folks are in town in Phoenix, we would love to meet and connect and, talk about all those different things, and really just focus on building the strength of our PAC because it really, really helps our advocacy efforts to be able to, show off and build a strong PAC to help amplify those efforts. And, I know that we've talked a lot about, we've thrown a lot of it at you over the last 30 minutes. And so we just want to take this opportunity to really open it up when it comes to questions related. If you have any questions about specific pieces of legislation that we talked about or ways in which you can get involved or the PAC, we're happy to take those questions here.
So I don't see any questions, Anthony. I don't know if you see any, but I don't see any questions. So I would just end by, really just thanking everybody for taking the time to be on the call today. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Brian. Our contact information is on the website. We'll also drop it in the chat right before we go. Feel free to use this as resources. If you've got any questions or if you just want to talk politics, if you want to talk policy, we're happy to just set up a time to individually talk with people. It's one of the things that I love doing. It's one of the things I think I do almost on a weekly basis is just try and connect with members about what they're seeing on the ground and the work that we're doing on Capitol Hill. I think sometimes it's part and parcel to what TIA does, but it isn't always the thing that people focus on a day-to-day basis because you're obviously running your businesses and making sure that things are going right on your end. But every day our job is to focus on what's happening on Capitol Hill, what's happening with regulators to make sure that your businesses can grow and they're protected as well so that policy doesn't go from being kind of an idea that might be bad or might harm the industry to moving forward. Our job is to stop that. And the other side of our job is to help policymakers understand what would help grow the industry and engage the industry and help your businesses flourish. So anytime that we can engage with you, we're happy to do it. I also want to just say thank you so much for being a TIA member. You're really the reason why we're here every day. It's your commitment to this organization and the success of your businesses. So I don't I know from my perspective and from the whole TIA team, we don't take your membership lightly. So if there's anything that we can do to support you, please feel free to email or call us. And if I don't know the answer, or Brian doesn't know the answer, or Anthony doesn't know the answer, we will certainly find the people in our organization that do. So thanks again. Thanks for attending, and look forward to seeing some of you at Capital Ideas, and look forward to connecting with you all otherwise. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Brian. Everyone, we will look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions, please reach out, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone. Thanks. Take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.